أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذ جعل الذين كفروا في قلوبهم الحمية حمية الجاهلية فأنزل الله سكينته على رسوله وعلى المؤمنين وألزمهم كلمة التقوى وكانوا أحق بها وأهلها وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. لقد صدق الله رسوله الرؤيا بالحق لتدخلن المسجد الحرام إن شاء الله آمنين محلقين رؤوسكم ومقصرين لا تخافون فعلم ما لم تعلموا فجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع لغير يغيث بهم الكفار. وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات الله أحسن الله عليكم.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. बेटी की तुरबत ज़हरा पे आई है, बेटी अली की तुरबत زینب سے کربلا کا ذرا ماجرا سنو، اماں ہمارے رنج و مصائب ہے دردناک، اماں ہمارے قلب و جگر ہو چکے چاک، بیٹی علی کی تربت زہرا پہ آئی ہے،
کرتا لہو بھرا ہوا بھائی کلائی ہے، اماں ہمارے نانا کی امت نے کی دگا، اماں ہمارے خون کو سمجھے سب روا، اماں ترس کے رہ گئے پانی کو ہم تمام، اماں دیا نہ ہم کو کسی نے بھی ایک جام، بیٹی علی کی تربت زہرا پہ آئی ہے، کرتا لہو بھرا ہوا بھائی کلائی ہے، اماں ہمارے مرد ہی سب قتل ہو گئے، اماں نہا کے خون میں بے چھار سو گئے، اماں پرے ہیں نہر پر عباس روٹھ کر، اماں سکینہ سوتی ہے زندہ میں بے پدر، بیٹی علی کی تربت زہرا پہ آئی ہے، کرتا لہو بھرا ہوا بھائی کلائی ہے، اماں کہاں سے اکبر ناشاد کو لاؤں میں، اماں کہاں سے اصغر نادا کو پاؤں میں، اماں حسین کرب و بلا ہی میں رہ گئے، اماں حسین سارے مصائب کو سہ گئے، بیٹی علی کی تربت زہرا پہ آئی ہے، کرتا لہو بھرا ہوا بھائی کلائی ہے، اماں زمین کرب و بلا لال لال ہے، اماں تمہاری بیٹی کی صورت سوال ہے، اماں ہماری چادر چھینی گئی تمام، اماں ہمارے حال پہ ہنستے تھے اہل شام، بیٹی علی کی تربت زہرا پہ آئی ہے، لہو بھرا ہوا بھائی کلائی، اماں یہ حال عابد بیمار ہو گیا، ظالم سپاہ نے لے لیا بستر غریب کا، اسیری رلا گئی گردن میں توق پاؤں میں زنجیر آ گئی، بیٹی علی کی تربت زہرا پہ آئی ہے، کرتا لہو بھرا ہوا بھائی کلائی ہے، اماں وہ بیویوں کا تڑپنا وہ شور و شیر، اماں رہے گی یاد وہ آہو بکا وہ بیر، اماں رباب روتی ہے اصغر کو صبح و شام، اکبر کو یاد کرتی ہے لیلائے تشنکام، बेटी अली की तुरबते ज़हरा पे आई है, कुर्ता लहू भरा हुआ भाई कलाई है। आई सदाए कब्र से ज़ैनब तू सब्र कर, कुर्ता लहू भरा हुआ रख देंगे पेश रब। बेटी तुम्हारा भाई शहे मशरक़ैन है, बेटी तुम्हारे सब्र में फ़तह हुसैन है। बेटी अली की तुरबते ज़हरा पे
Gents Namaz Area, then inshallah they'll be able to take part in this interactive session. If you're part of the broadcast group, we'll send you a message. So you'll probably need your phones for this session. You'll be asked some questions by Sheikh, and then using your phone, you can actually answer those questions. So there's a link which has been sent on the broadcast group. So perhaps if you can get your phones ready. Those of you who are not on the broadcast group, if you can put your hands up, and then I'll send you a link to join that group. For those ladies who don't know English and only Gujarati,
Yes.
is that option available?
Yes, always. You can translate.
You can translate.
My Gujarati isn't very good. She's okay, but Gujarati isn't very good.
Is it similar?
Sorry?
It's not similar.
It's
Kind of.
kind of. But
Is Hindi considered similar?
It's the same language.
Is it?
Same language. It's the same language. Only difference is at the conversation level it's the same. At higher level they use Sanskrit idioms and they use Farsi idioms. That's all.
Right.
And the writing system is different. That's all. The same difference between Ottoman Turkish and the modern Turkish. They use a lot of Persian,
Yes.
written in Arabic alphabet. Modern Turkish uses pure Turkish words with Latin alphabet.
Latin alphabet,
Same
yeah.
difference.
Thank you. Ya Allah.
you need the Menti link on there, no?
Sorry?
You need the Menti page on there.
If possible, yeah. Because we want to be able to show what they're answering.
But not sure. You need to show the Menti page on that.
You sent me the Fatiha then, right?
Yes, I've sent you.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. So as ever, there will be several ayat that you and I will need. So for now, if you just get your phones out, because I will give you a chance during the lecture to be able to find the ayat. But there's several. If I give it to you all in advance, it might become a bit long. So I'll just go through it as we go through. So keep your phones or your Qur'ans available to you, inshaAllah. As you heard, we are also going to have a bit of a question and answer, but this time it's going to be me asking you the questions. And if you have your phones, you can add to the conversation through the Menti link. It should be quite self-explanatory, but if you open up the link, you'll find where you can type in a word or a sentence up to 25 characters. So in there you can submit your answers. Okay? And it will pop up immediately on the screen. So no rude words. We won't know who it is that has put that up on the screen, but...
Oh, we will actually.
Oh, we can? Okay, great. So then send what you want, okay. We have a request for Surah Al-Fatiha for Hamida Auntie's parents, Marhum Ahmed Ladak and Marhuma Fatima by Ladak. For both of them, if we can recite a Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. If you want to have the first verse open, it will be chapter number 35, Surah Fatir, verse number 28. This will be the first verse that we look at very early on in the discussion. So if you have that verse available already, that will be good, inshallah. For the love of Her Eminence, Lady Fatima Masuma al-Qum, Salamullahi alayha, Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana li hadha wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس والدواب والأنعام مختلف ألوانه كذلك إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء إن الله عزيز غفور آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our occasion tonight is to commemorate the martyrdom anniversary of Lady Fatima Masuma, Salamullahi alayha. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us her ziyarah fi dunya wal akhirah, grant us her intercession in this world and in the next, and make this majlis a means of commiseration to the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-sharif. What is the difference between an alim and a dhakir of the community? In different communities, there will be different titles and different words used for different people who ascend onto the pulpit. As you know by now, pulpits are not one. Sometimes the pulpit can be for dars. Sometimes pulpit can be for majlis-e-aza. Sometimes pulpit can be for an urgent discussion that needs to take place in the community. And so ascend onto the pulpit are not necessarily of the same caliber, not necessarily of the same level of expertise in various different subjects. In our immediate Khoja Indo-Pak community, we often refer to people who recite the majlis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam as being a Dhakir. Of course, this comes from the Arabic being Dhakir, someone who does dhikr of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, who reminds us of the position of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. In other communities, for example, in the Arabic community, they will not say Zakir, they will not say Dhakir. They will refer to someone as being a Khatib. A Khatib, from the word khutbah, to be able to give a speech, and it will be a similar kind of notion. In the Iranian community, you will have a similar word called the maddah, those people who do the madh of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and revise the praise of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Separate to this is someone who is an alim. The challenge we have in our community is that sometimes we have lost track, lost sight of how to be able to differentiate between who is a dhakir and who is an alim. And sometimes we merge those two individuals into one. And this, of course, causes much havoc within the community. What is the difference between an alim and a dhakir? How do we designate between these two such that no person can then misidentify someone on the pulpit, or someone on the pulpit can misrepresent his or herself to the audience, because one person may present themselves as an alim, whereas in reality what they are doing is the job of a dhakir. Or someone may be considered to be a dhakir, but in reality his level of knowledge and insight is actually at the level of being an alim. How do you and I differentiate that? And why is it so important for us today? The first thing we have to realize is that the way our communities are going, we have seen that sometimes those people who give opinions from the pulpit may not necessarily be qualified to give an opinion from the pulpit. But also the potential of the opposite is true. Someone who is qualified to give an opinion from the pulpit, when he or she gives an opinion, they are often pulled down, even though their ability to give an opinion is legitimate. Therefore, number one, the reason why we need to be able to differentiate between the two is we need to know who is in a position of authority to give an opinion and who is not. Number one. Number two, in this, and I'm going to use the word colloquially, in this game, there are many titles that are given to different scholars. Someone is a Sayyid, someone is a Sheikh. Sometimes we have titles given to certain people in the community, whereas in reality those titles are well above what they... For example, in certain communities we are very quick to hand people out the title of Al-Allama. Often on a poster you will see Allama such and such, Allama this and this. In the Hawzawi sense, Al-Allama is the one station below Ayatullah. And look at the level of a person who's given the title Al-Allama. His Eminence Al-Allama Sayyid Tabatabai, Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayh. Sayyid Muhammad Hussain Tabatabai, the author of Al-Mizan. The reason why Sayyid Tabatabai was never given the title Ayatullah, even though sometimes he is referred to as Ayatullah, is because in the traditional system of the Hawza today, when a person has completed their Bath Kharij and they are now a mujtahid, proven mujtahid in fiqh, you often are given the title of being Ayatullah. Whereas a person who may focus on other sciences and they have not declared or presented their abilities as a mujtahid in fiqh, they may not be given that title Ayatullah. They are still at the level of Al-Allama. Allama Tabatabai for sure was a mujtahid in his own right. But his writings and what he produced was primarily in philosophy and then the tafsir of the Quran. And because he did not provide certain texts and works in this area of fiqh and ahkam, he was traditionally not given the title of Ayatullah, but very well known as Al-Allama. This is not a low rank, this is not a middle rank, it is a very high rank. Often today you will see many people on posters being given the title Al-Allama, but they are not in the Hawzawi sense Al-Allama. Similarly, I have seen many a times posters offering the title Hujjat al-Islam wal-Mu'mineen. Have you seen it? HIWM, and then the Shaykh or the Sayyid. Again, I will emphasize Hujjat al-Islam, someone who is an evidence of Islam and an authority in Islam. That title cannot and should not be bandied about. Allah is my witness. I'm not telling you this because I want you to praise me. I want you to realize the realities. Recently, we did a program at a particular center. The poster was put out with HIMW, Hujjat al-Islam wal-Muslimin, or HIWM, whatever it is, before my name. And the poster went out, and I messaged and I said, take that down. Do not muddy that title with someone as low as me. You have to respect that title. It means that person has genuinely gone through a system of study and producing that he is deserved or she is deserved of that title. So the second problem we have is that sometimes titles are mixed up, and as a result, the community cannot differentiate between who is an Alim and who is a Dhakir. Second reason. Third reason as to why this is so important is because actually, arguably, the most important, when I say important, I mean prominent, position in the community now has become the one who takes the pulpit. Dhakireen sometimes carry more weight than even maraja'. Sometimes you will see people who can speak eloquently. The way practically their messages are being delivered is actually being delivered far and wide, even more far and wide than maraja' al-kiram sometimes. There's a study that's been done recently by Dr. Ali Raza Bojani, very well known to this community, and Dr. Morgan Clark. Dr. Clark is a senior member of the faculty at the University of Oxford in the anthropology department. So not an ordinary individual, a very accomplished scholar. Dr. Ali Raza Bojani needs no introduction from me. Dr. Bojani and Dr. Clark, we require an intermediary to deliver that to us. Now let's be honest, the majority of us will not take time to read the fatwa for ourselves, time to research it for ourselves. Let's be honest, the majority of the people will just go to the Alim. And they'll go to the Alim and say, what's Sayyid Sistani's opinion on X? And you also know that certain masail, they are mediated through opinions and understandings and interpretations. And the mediation happens at a number of levels. The mediation happens at the Alim's knowledge of the level of the fatwa, their understanding of the fatwa, and the way in which you and I who receive the discussion then also interpret it. I'll give you an example. Dr. Bajani was telling me about this Living Sharia project, and he interviewed many people from the Khoja community about their experiences with resident ulama, with the Sharia, and they often asked about the masail that certain people find problematic. And he mentions, he says there's one madrasa teacher, as an example. This madrasa teacher, she found the mas'ala of handshaking to be very, very difficult. You know, the mas'ala of handshaking is, are we allowed to shake hands with a mahram? And it's a usual problem. There's the fatwa, and then obviously you know that sometimes the individual alim will then try to understand it and negotiate it and then present it. But then you will also try to understand it for yourself. So she says, I'm a very strict follower of His Eminence Ayatollah As-Sistani, may Allah preserve him. And so it's absolutely haram to shake hands with someone who is na-mahram. Then she continues to say, but I've always heard from the scholars that you're not supposed to offend someone. So when I went to go and have this issue of handshaking, I really struggle with it because I want to keep to the fatwa of Sayyid Sistani, but I've always heard that I'm not supposed to offend the non-Muslim. So now I don't know how to be able to deal with this mas'ala. Job interview, circumstances, this, that. The other time, Dr. Bajani says, there was someone else. Now this person had the same issue with the same mas'ala. How to implement that famous handshaking mas'ala, the one that we always kind of debate and grapple with. Or some people do at least. Now this person wasn't like this sister, the madrasa teacher. She said, I'm a strict follower to the dot of what Sayyid Sistani says. But my problem is, I've heard that I'm not supposed to offend. His position was 180 degrees opposite. His position was, I don't understand how this contravenes hijab. Hijab is normally something that is around the sexualization of someone. If I'm just handshaking and it's a greeting, this shouldn't be considered to be anything that breaks hijab. But I've never found any marja that understands the mas'ala in that way, and therefore, even though I believe it doesn't contravene hijab, I won't do it. I've looked at all the maraji' al-kiram and not one of them agrees with my personal opinion. Now understand the nuance of what I'm saying, why the alim and the dhakir is so important here. In the first case, you had a sister who declared, I am strict with Sayyid Sistani's opinion. I follow it 100%. But I've heard often that you're not supposed to offend someone. How many of you have heard that you're not supposed to offend someone? How many? Hands up. I will say that's over 75% of you. I'm going to tell you now from this pulpit, there is no such thing in Islam. No marja has ever put that as part of the considerations of the handshaking issue. Not one person. There's no such thing. This consideration of I'm not supposed to offend the other does not exist in this mas'ala whatsoever. It does not exist. I've said it 3 times. What there is the issue of hardship. When excessive hardship or burden comes upon you, this is when you can negotiate the mas'ala with that situation. But the bar is excessive hardship, as an example. And there are other criteria. But this idea of offending someone does not exist in Islam. Who said you're not allowed to offend someone? If your belief is this and you're responsible to Allah, offend someone all you want. It's not a problem. Now the point I make is, she had been hearing, according to her understanding, remember she's a very traditionalist, strict person. I've been hearing. Who have you been hearing from? Can you see that? The alim will know the mas'ala properly, that there is no such thing as don't offend. The dhakir may not necessarily have studied the mas'ala properly and may include a condition and then attribute it to Sayyid Sistani, which is nothing to do with His Eminence Sayyid Sistani. Can you see that? Can you see how important the difference between alim and dhakir is? On the other side, Dr. Bajani is saying that there's another person, remember the second person, his personal understanding, and you all know we have our ways in which we negotiate problems. He says, my personal understanding was that it doesn't break hijab. I should be able to, and I actively went to every single marja, or I went to every alim and said, is there a marja that you know that allows me to do this? Is there any one marja that I can legitimately go to and say, look, it's not contravening hijab, shake your hands if you want to. And every alim said no. And every marja said no. So the role of the alim in the dhakir is very important, because sometimes a person may not understand a mas'ala properly, misconstrue it and present it to the audience such that now the ordinary individual is misguided. Sayyid Sistani's opinion is being mediated by levels of people all the way down until it reaches me and you. Can you see that? Here are 3 reasons as to why we need to be able to understand the difference between an alim and a dhakir. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, the reason as to why we bring this up tonight is twofold. One, it is of course Lady Fatima Masuma alayhi salam's demise anniversary. And you know that Qum is the city of knowledge, like Najaf is a city of knowledge. So it befits us to discuss an issue of knowledge. Number 1. Number 2, we've recently been talking about that series about the role of the pulpit. And so this was a natural continuation of that discussion. Open the Qur'ans if you will. Chapter number 35, verse number 28. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us with an ayah about the ulama. Very famous verse. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't speaking about ulama as in those people who are graduates of the Hawza Ilmiya. He is speaking about ulama in the sense of those people who are genuinely learned. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, and amongst mankind. Now what that means is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that there are different people amongst mankind. All of mankind are not the same. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, from amongst mankind. وَالدَّوَابِ, and beasts. Dawab in Arabic are those creatures that kind of walk on all fours. Yeah? وَالْأَنْعَامِ, and cattle. مُخْتَلِفٌ أَلْوَانُهُ كَذَلِكَ. There are various types, various colors, various types basically. It doesn't literally, lawn means color. Alwan is the plural, colors. But it doesn't mean colors. It means people are of different levels, different types. They're not all the same. Cattle, animals, they're of different types. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to tell you about one type of human being. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. Those of His servants who are truly ulama, truly possessed of knowledge, are not those necessarily who graduated from Hawza, wearing a turban. What are they? They are the ones who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يَخْشَى اللَّهِ. They have awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ غَفُورٌ. Indeed, Allah is mighty, forgiving. Now this verse tells us 2 major things. 1, people are not all of the same types. And number 2, there must be ways of distinguishing different types of people. Allah is saying that there are alwan, different categories, and then the one way to identify people is that they have awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we're going to do tonight inshaAllah is to think about 3 things. Number 1, what is the role of spirituality in differentiating between alim and dhakir? Number 1. Number 2, what are the differences in ilm in alim and dhakir? And 3, how do we differentiate them in terms of their role within the Muslim Ummah and within the community between the alim and the dhakir? And inshaAllah, that will give us some starting point by which we are able to think about this mas'ala. Open your Menti links inshaAllah if you will. The first question I want you to answer is the following. I want you to give me a description of a dhakir. What are your qualities that you find in a dhakir? What should be in a dhakir? Not what should not be in an alim, or what is in a dhakir. How do you define a dhakir? How do you define a khatib? Such that if I was sitting in front of you, if you wanted to say Jaffer is alim or dhakir, and I tell you now for sure I am dhakir and not alim, but if you were to differentiate someone sitting on your pulpit, how would you at this point differentiate between alim and dhakir? What are the qualities of a dhakir? Okay, I can't see the answers. Are they popping up on the screen? Okay, I can't see them. Maybe someone can volunteer to read them out for me and help. And I'll repeat it so that those at home are able to follow along as well, inshallah. Who would like to help us out? Tariq, do you need your glasses to be able to see to the screen? Or you can see well? MashaAllah. It's all that recitation of the Quran. The eyes are sharp, you see? Okay, would you like to help us? Give me the descriptions of a dhakir.
Choose from.
Go ahead, just read them out and I'll try to repeat some of them.
Good public speaking, his level of knowledge.
Good public speaking.
Knowledgeable.
Knowledgeable.
Sharp mind and intelligent.
Sharp mind and intelligent.
Eloquence.
Eloquence.
Honest.
Honest.
Poet.
MashaAllah, poet. Definitely, I have not even reached dhakir level, I tell you that.
Orator.
Narrator, orator.
Learned.
Learned.
Good Islamic knowledge.
Good Islamic knowledge.
Well, somebody's put crackers.
Oh, Rashid, was that you? Was that you?
High education.
High education.
Good oratory skills.
Good oratory skills. Okay, so far we've had oratory and eloquence a few times, right? That's quite interesting. We've had knowledge, like there is genuinely an expectation of knowledge. Correct. What else? Anything else?
Well, last few, spiritually knowledgeable, his level of knowledge, and I think of inspirational qualifications, and that's it.
Okay, excellent. You see, it's not as easy as you think, is it? It's not as easy as you think. The moment you start to define something, it can become a little bit, because you have to think about the boundaries. Because the moment you say eloquent, well, an alim can be eloquent as well. And an alim can also be, you say all these things are also counting for an alim as well. So what is it specifically that binds a dhakir, in your opinion? Okay. So now, having seen that little bit of exercise, I'm going to give you my descriptions of a dhakir, and I'm also going to reference some of it, and then we'll also go into the Quran and such things in order to help us to be able to differentiate some of these finer points. What I do want from you, if you don't mind, maybe if Adnan doesn't mind, we can write it on the screen, or maybe you can write it. I would like you to have some note of what is a dhakir. So write it on your phone, and then you will be able to think through these things for yourself. Because it's not a lengthy list, there's 4 or 5 points, but it's important. Yeah, and we can think about this as we go along together, inshallah. Okay. The central, primary quality of a dhakir, and this is not demeaning in any way, this is someone who does dhikr of Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam on their pulpit. So don't think in any way, shape or form this is lowering anyone. We'd be honored, all of us, to be dhakirin of Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. Number 1. The most important thing that you need to know and what a dhakir is that they are rehearsing someone else's knowledge. They are basically taking from someone else's hard work. The creation of that knowledge was not from them. Now what this means is, as a consequence, that they themselves have not initiated, created new fields of knowledge in any way. They are reading or listening to someone else and then reconveying it to you. I am not ashamed to say that often for majlis, I will listen to ulama, see how they have presented their research, and then I can come and tell you what it is. No shame. And many, many, many will do it. So now, the fact that I'm listening to Ayatollah X or senior scholar Y from the Hawza, they have done their original research. Yeah, it's referenced. They've written the book. I'm reading the book. But I haven't created that knowledge. I've done the adhkar there. I have done the tadhkir of it. I have enlivened their knowledge and presented to you as my knowledge. In reality, I am doing the dhikr of that knowledge. Of course, that knowledge always goes back, because even that author will have to have relied on something. But we'll explain why an alim creates knowledge. And I'll explain that to you shortly in a minute, inshallah. So number one, the first most important thing is a dhakir is the one who rehearses knowledge. He takes it from someone else and then gives it to you. Number two, if you ask them for a higher level analysis, they would get stuck. That's not a bad thing necessarily. My friend Dr. Akil here, Doctor, can I ask you, what level of training have you reached in your career?
2 years.
FY2?
Well,
FY3, mashallah. May Allah make you a clinical director and even more. Okay? Yeah? So you will recognize that you have reached a certain level of knowledge, and then there are those who are the middle grade doctors, their rotation, they will have a greater degree of knowledge, and a consultant will have even greater, and so on and so forth. There's levels of knowledge, there's levels of experience, practical experience, all of that will come into play. Would that be fair? If I was to come and ask you a certain question, there might be a level of question that you can answer. Will you understand and admit that there might be a level of medical question that I ask you that you cannot answer? Similarly, the dhakir is the one, when you ask him a higher level question about aqaid, about fiqh, about ulum al-Quran, about philosophy, whatever it may be, he or she cannot go that far. There is a cutoff point of their knowledge. In preparation for this lecture, tonight's lecture, I consulted certain senior scholars. Amongst them, I listened to the Bahth Kharij of Ijtihad and Taqleed of Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi, and I also spoke with the son of Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Jaffer Subhani and others, but I'm naming those two, in preparation for this majlis. They gave me these features and qualities, some of them. Some of them I have come up with myself, some of them they have given me. In those areas that they have given to me, I am dhakir. I am revising and renewing their knowledge. I am not alim in this. I am dhakir. You understand? Ayatollah Sheikh Jaffer Subhani, his son, told me, the example is like the doctor may pick up the prescription and may be able to read some of the ingredients on the prescription, on the medicine. Does it necessarily mean that you know everything about that prescription, what's inside it? What all the chemicals individually do? What their relationships to each other are? Do you know that? No. The doctor can prescribe it, but he doesn't necessarily understand all of the intricacies of it. And if I was to read out the package on the box and say, can you tell me what this particular chemical does? As an example, you might not be able to answer it. In the same way, the dhakir can tell you the answer. He can tell you the prescription, Marja Sistani, may Allah bless him, tells you this is the fatwa. Can he tell you how Sayyid Sistani derived it? No. You understand? Can he tell you what the other marajits debates about that are? No. If that person cannot do it, he is Dhakir. He can tell you what the prescription is, but he can't tell you what's inside the box, so to speak. Third way to understand what the Dhakir is. Fourth way to understand what the Dhakir or the Khatib is that he is one who focuses on the art of rhetoric in order to positively motivate and influence his audience. Now, I listened to a lot of James O'Brien. And James O'Brien told a story a few days ago on LBC. He said that when he used to go onto BBC Question Time, about 3 or 4 episodes in, he was told by the producer that as long as you finish your sentence on a high note, you will get the crowd to clap for you and it will seem like your point is impactful. It doesn't matter what codswallop you say, as long as you do it da-da-da-da-da-da and you finish with a bounce, you will get the entire audience to clap for you and it will seem like your point is powerful. That's the art of rhetoric. And you will know that often the Dhakir, the Khatib, is a master in rhetoric. I was speaking to Rashid Uncle the other day, and we were joking about the number of places that I'm banned from. And actually, I'm banned from more places than I'm allowed to speak. And that's the truth. I think in the Khoja community, if I wasn't banned in Leeds, I might be banned in every single community in the Khoja community in the UK. And it's not an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration. If it wasn't for Islamic Center and AIM and Baab and Dar and Leeds, I don't know where I would recite in this country, huh? So we were joking about the number of places that I'm banned, and I asked, I said, what do I have to do to get banned from Leeds? And not turn up. And Rashid, he did this. He went, the moment you slap your thigh and you go into all the rhetoric stuff, then I think that's the time you're going to be banned from Leeds. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Don't give the salawat that I'm banned, huh? The last way you can identify the Khatib, the Zakir, is very important. And again, I will admit to this, and it's a shame for all of us. May Allah help us. We are blessed with having so many majalis, right? Every day, sometimes 2-3 majalis in the day, sometimes in a week, so many majalis. But for the one who's preparing majlis, it becomes very, to try to keep, the audience going with new, information. The Dhakir will research for the purpose of speaking, not necessarily for the purpose of learning, and not necessarily for the purpose of acting. How many Fridays, how many Thursdays, how many kushalis, how many wafats? The amount of times I have to tell you an ayah, the amount of times I have to tell you a hadith, Allah knows, I don't practice half of them. Here I am telling you to do this, I haven't done this thing in, the one major thing that Dhakireen are not prohibited, it's on the verge of prohibited from doing. Don't tell people to do Salat al-Layl unless you yourself do Salat al-Layl. How many Dhakireen they'll give you a whole majlis. But spend the evening with them, the night after the majlis, you will see that by the time Fajr comes, they won't have prayed their Salat al-Layl. That's a Dhakir. They will tell you, they will learn and read for the purpose of conveying, not necessarily for the purpose of acting themselves. And that's a warning to me. The moment I do that, I'm telling you I am a Dhakir of ilm. I'm not the practitioner of that ilm. Yeah? And this is how you and I can differentiate between those people who are alim and those people who are Dhakir. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, now, if you'll open up your mentees, again, what we want to do is ask you, How do you define an alim? Okay, has it been populated? Is it up on the screen? Brother Ladak, do you mind reading out for us? What is an alim?
Okay, creates knowledge, spiritually knowledgeable, again, similar stuff. Comprehensive, is that the same one?
Yeah, it's the same.
Is it the same?
It's not.
Oh, this is
It's saying you, if you go on the link, it's saying you've already answered the question. So you need to create a new.
Oh no, we have to create a new link, huh?
I think it is.
Okay, khair. So we'll leave that for now. Try it now? Okay, sorry, you might have to retype your answers in. This shows that you're alim of the answers that you gave. Okay, so we can try to get those answers. Thank you. What is there for an alim?
creates knowledge, interpretation ability, formal Islamic education, studied at Hawza, scholars in Islamic ways studied in Hawza, another one, interpretation ability, I've said that right, learned scholar, comprehensive knowledge, PhD graduate in their subject, can create and analyze,
Okay.
gives sources and references,
Oh, excellent. Give sources and references, okay.
research,
Yeah. Anything else on there that we need to mention? No? Okay, good. So, again, if you could kindly just take out your notes. Again, let's really be concise on what we think an alim is. And again, as I said, I've spoken to ulama and asked them their opinions on this. And I am doing three things. I'm primarily providing you the opinion of Ayatollah Sayyid Marja al-Mudarrisi, the son of Ayatollah Jaffer Subhani, and my own way of distinguishing as well. Okay? An alim is a scholar who is someone who has studied at the Hawza and graduated from it, and is a voice of authority and qualified to add to the tapestry of knowledge. Graduate of the Hawza is a voice of authority and is qualified to add to the tapestry of knowledge. I'll explain this. Now, what I mean by this is twofold. Number one, that he has reached a level, at least some level of ijtihad, the ability to discern for himself in certain topics. It doesn't have to be in every bab of fiqh, or every bab of aqaid, or every bab of ulum al-Quran, but he has the ability himself to be able to discern right from wrong properly, when it comes to these matters, which means that he knows how to assess and evaluate and understand different ideologies that are existing within that particular science. He can answer the shubhat, the questions that are coming to, which are often questions that create problems for people in their mind. Now this is the key thing to differentiate an alim from a dhakir. The alim has the ability to provide you with evidence, not through imitation of someone else. The moment he has to rely on someone else's knowledge, he is a dhakir of that person's knowledge. But the moment he has the ability to create knowledge, which has not necessarily existed, or an interpretation and an understanding that does not necessarily exist in that field, whatever it is, in history, in aqaid, in falsafa, in anything, when he has got the ability to not rely on someone else and imitate, he has now reached the level of being an alim. That means the bar is exceedingly high. Most of those people who sit on the pulpit are not alim. And I say that with honesty and confidence, and I don't mean to offend anyone. An alim is someone who is qualified to add to the tapestry of knowledge. They have the ability to assess and evaluate, and they don't necessarily rely on evidence by imitation of someone else. I'm going to give you one last example of this, and this is very... I know sometimes scholars will be watching this, so sometimes I have to be very precise in giving points. The alim is the one, this is my opinion, humble opinion. The alim is the one who thinks through the objections before his teaching of the mas'ala. If the objections to his understanding are correct, he revises his opinion. If the objections that he creates to his own opinions are incorrect, he prepares the responses to those faulty and weak objections. I'm not sure if that made sense. In Hawzawi sciences, what this is known as Daf' al-Dakhil al-Muqaddam. I'll give you an example. There's a wonderful book written by Alim al-Hilli, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, called Kashf al-Murad. Basically, it's an aqaid book. It's one of our very best, finest of aqaid books. And what he does is, as he's, for example, debating the proof of God, the evidences for God, he looks at it from the other side. How those masters might try to undermine his argument, he creates their knowledge for them. Those who are atheists, they themselves haven't even thought of these arguments to undermine his arguments. He creates his arguments. He then looks at it from the other side, creating new knowledge that even the atheists haven't done. And then if he was wrong and their arguments are better, he then has to revise his own argument. And if their arguments are wrong, he then responds to their arguments that he created. Do you understand? That's what an alim does. He creates knowledge. He's not revising knowledge that exists. Yeah, he has to do that at times because he has to tell you this is the opinion of Sayyid Sistani, Sayyid Khamenei. But the alim is the one that's producing knowledge. He's adding to the tapestry of knowledge and not just taking from the tapestry of knowledge. Do you understand? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, let's conclude very quickly, and I want to just mention some verses of the Quran for you. I want to answer 3 questions. 1, what are the spiritual roles of the alim? What is the spiritual role of the alim? What is the role of the alim? And what is the level of knowledge of the alim from the Quran? Okay, very quickly. If you turn in your Qur'ans, chapter number 33, verse 39. chapter number 33, verse 39. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alladhina yuballighuna risalatillah. Those who are muballighin, they deliver the messages of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do? وَيَخْشَوْنَهُ. They fear Allah. وَلَا يَخْشَوْنَ أَحَدًا إِلَّا اللَّهِ. They do not fear anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The alim must not fear any other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The dhakir will fear the crowd. He will play to the crowd, and if the crowd is upset with him, then he will move to the crowd's likings and dislikings. The alim is not considering what the audience like and dislike. Even if he gets killed for it, he will put the knowledge forward, on the proviso that he's not doing harm to society. Daf' ad-darar. We talked about this in the series. I'll tell you a story. Ayatollah Ali Kuni, or Ali Khani, depending on how you pronounce it. At the time of one of the Qajari caliphs or kings, this king wanted to be able to destroy a masjid and build a palace, his palace, on top of that land, because the land was very good. So he decided to call all of the ulama and say, I want you to write for me a fatwa that permits me to destroy a masjid, so I will build my palace, but I'll build an even more beautiful, luxurious masjid down the road. So you won't lose out, you'll still have an even better masjid. All of the court client scholars signed the fatwa. But the biggest scholar of that time was Ayatollah Ali Khani. They needed him. So they started to put pressure on him, write the fatwa, sign the fatwa. Ayatollah Khani said, I will sign the fatwa myself, not in private. I want to sign it in public so everybody sees me sign it. So that there's no duplicitous opinion, he signed it, he didn't sign it. So he said, I'm going to come in 3 days' time inside and I want everyone to see me sign it so they know that I have written this. Otherwise there'll be tumult. In those 3 days, the king is decorating the palace in honor for him to come and sign it. Ayatollah Ali Khani, he walks through the palace, everybody's there watching him. He signs the document, Assalamu alaikum, he walks out. The king asks to see the piece of paper. You know what he wrote on it? He wrote the opening verses of Surah Al-Fil. What's the opening verses of Surah Al-Fil? Do you not see how the Lord dealt with those people who were going to destroy the Kaaba? The king was so maddened that he couldn't destroy the masjid, because everybody realized the ayah of Quran. They waited till Ayatollah died, and then they destroyed the masjid and rebuilt it. Alim does not fear anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one. Number two, second spiritual quality of the alim, chapter number I think it's 39, verse 9. Yes, chapter number 39, verse 9. Surah Az-Zumar, verse 9. Everybody's there? Everybody's there? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّنْ هُوَ قَانِتٌ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ سَاجِدًا وَقَائِمًا يَحْذَرُ الْآخِرَةَ وَيَرْجُو رَحْمَةَ رَبِّهِ. What is he who is obedient during the hours of the night, busying himself in prostration and standing before Allah, the one who takes care of the hereafter and is constantly hoping for the mercy of his Lord? Is he the same as the one who does not do this? قُلْ هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون. علم, the alim. Say, are those who know and those who do not know, is the alim and the non-alim alike? How does Allah explain the alim here? The one who is a worshipper of Allah in the darkness of the night. No one else knows his worship. Allah knows his worship. This is the quality of an alim. إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ الْأَلْبَابَ. Yeah? So this is qualities of the ulama. Second, what is the level of the knowledge of the alim? One ayah to be able to show you, inshallah, chapter number 30, verse 22. Chapter number 30, Surah Ar-Rum, verse 22. What is the level of the knowledge of the alim? Everybody's there? Yes? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكُمْ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ, the knowledgeable. Yeah? And one of Allah's signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth and the diversity of your tongues and colors. Most surely there are signs in this for the alameen, the learned, the alam. Now, Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi in his Bahth Kharij explains this verse. He says the meaning of this verse is the alim. The alim is the one who knows the nuances and the subtleties of his sciences. Yeah. Again, doctor will tell you there are so many subtle details when it comes to medicine, things that people will never appreciate. This fine 1 point, this 1 millimeter off changes everything when it comes to this operation, when it comes to this issue. The alim understands that 1 degree of shift, this changes the mas'ala in this way. He understands the nuances and subtleties of the matter. The dhakir will not know that. Lastly, what is the role of the alim? Chapter number 4, verse number 60. Chapter number 4, Surah An-Nisa, verse 60 and 61. Everybody's there, inshallah? What is the role of the alim? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Have you not seen those who assert that they believe in what has been revealed to you, Ya Rasulullah? And what has been revealed before you, Ya Rasulullah? They desire to summon one another to the judgments of shaitan. Those who are hypocrites and disbelievers, they want to call you towards the judgment of shaitan. Though they were commanded to deny him, and shaitan desires to lead them astray. Verse 61. When it is said to them, come to that which Allah has revealed, and the apostle has revealed, you will see the hypocrites turning away in utter aversion. What is the role of the alim? The role of the alim is to make clear the judgments of shaitan from the judgments of Allah and the Prophet. Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi in his Bahth Kharij says the point here being made is, it's not the role of the alim to go into every single issue, every single community debate. The alim is dealing with the matters fighting against the shayateen. He has to do the idhar of ilm. This is the role of the alim. The dhakir may be able to deal with the community stuff, but the alim is looking at the highest level issues that are existing within the community and guiding at the very highest level of the community. Same thing, I imagine, clinical director has a bigger purview than what the junior doctor has. The junior doctor has to come and deal with everything that comes in front of him, whatever is told to him to deal with. But the clinical director has a wider purview. He's gone through that process of dealing with the stuff at the beginning, and now his purview is up here. These verses that I've just shown you, these last 4 or 5 verses, all of them are from the Bahth Kharij of Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi. You see how he understands the Quran? This is creating new knowledge. This is the first time you will see ayat being used in these way. He has delved into the matter, created knowledge. I am the dhakir of that knowledge. I am not alim. Her Eminence, Lady Fatima Masuma alayhi salam, was an alima. She was of the grandest level of knowledge and understanding and ma'rifah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Should I summarize in one way to prove she was the alima of her time? Bar none. In the year 200 after Hijrah, Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was forced to leave Medina and come to Khurasan. In the year 201 after Hijrah, heartbroken, distanced from her brother, Lady Fatima Masuma alayhi salam had said she had enough and she wanted to go and serve the Imam of her time, irrespective of the dangers that it would cause her. She had such ma'rifah. Amongst all of the more than 40 sons and daughters of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, only if Lady Fatima Masuma alayhi salam went to support Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. And you know the narrations. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam would say, if you visit my sister's grave in Qum, it is as if you have visited me. From Qum, there is going to be knowledge that's going to settle in this location. All of these narrations are well known to you. She went with more than 20 of the family members from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and they traveled from Medina al-Munawwara going towards Khurasan. In every location, they would stop and they would revise the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, speaking about Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, speaking about the laws of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. When this news reached towards Ma'mun al-Rashid, he told his army to go and attack this caravan of 20 men from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to which all of them were slaughtered. According to one understanding, they fed poison to Fatima Masuma alayhi salam. According to the other, that she was so hurt and aggrieved at what had happened to her brother and to her family members that this caused her to slip into illness. In either case, Lady Fatima Masuma alayhi salam said, take me to the nearest Shia stronghold city, which was Qum, and let me try to regain my strength there. When Fatima Masuma alayhi salam reached Qum, eventually the poison overtook her body and she was unable to survive the poison that ran through her body. And then you can imagine how aggrieved Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was at the death of his sister. She died before Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, and Imam al-Rida alayhi salam was so hurt by the death of his sister. Once again, in the family of Ahlul Bayt, you see the love between a brother and a sister. You see how the Zainab of her time comes rushing to the aid of the Hussein of her time. And you see how the Hussein of his time loves the Zainab of his time. You can imagine then the love between Zainab al-Kubra and Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, by virtue of seeing the love of Lady Fatima Masuma for the love of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. Imagine that moment. Imagine that moment when Sayyida Zainab returns back to Karbala to bury the head of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. There is that line of poetry that says that when Sayyida Zainab reached the grave, reached the broken body of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, she said to him, Anta akhi, are you really my brother? How I have seen you in this way that your body has been torn to pieces. The poet says that when Zainab al-Kubra reached back towards Karbala, there must have been a voice that came from the grave and said, Anti ukhti, are you really my sister? Is this what has happened to you in all of these days of suffering and trauma and torture? Is this how I see you have returned back to me from Damascus back to Karbala? This must have been the love between these two, the brother and the sister. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, to allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. If we are to pass away from this world before his coming, Ya Allah, raise us from our graves so that we can partake in the victories of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We ask you, Ya Allah, there are many people around the world going through such desperate times, those people in a state of war and oppression, poverty, homelessness, disease and disaster. Ya Allah, grant them all safety, security and victory for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Lady Fatima Masuma fi dunya wal akhirah, the ziyarah of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam fi dunya wal akhirah, and in the final moments of our life, we die in the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا إمام حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا إمام زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا إمام محمد الباقر العلوم، السلام عليك يا إمام جعفر الصادق، السلام عليك يا إمام موسى الكاظم يا باب الهوائج، السلام عليك يا إمام علي بن موسى الرضا، السلام عليك يا إمام محمد التقي الجواد، السلام عليك يا إمام علي الهادي، السلام عليك يا إمام حسن العسكري جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان سيدي الأمان من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان سيدي متى ترانا ونراك عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله تعالى مخرجه وظهور الأمر. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.